Hey guys, Charles Yeager for Tuts Plus. Today we're going to be looking at how to animate a UI or an interface animation, such as for an app or some type of prototype program. And a lot of times what's common, people will create the elements of their program or app in Photoshop or Illustrator, essentially making the layout, and then they will import these files into After Effects in order to control all the animation. This gives them a quick prototype that they can show to a client so they can get a feel for what they're exactly, saying when they're talking about it, animating on screen. It's a lot easier when you can show them something. And so today we're going to be animating kind of a mock app in After Effects, and we'll go through everything kind of step by step. This is kind of a beginner-esque tutorial. However, if this is your first time working in After Effects, I'm going to highly recommend you take a couple other beginner courses before doing this one. It's going to help you out immensely. There are two beginner series that I recommend. The first one is actually on AE Tuts, and it's by Dave Scotland. He's got about 10 different tutorials here that are kind of an intro to After Effects. These average about 30 minutes long in length a piece, I think. I would definitely do the first three because I think that's where he talks about more of the keyframe stuff, which is what we're going to be covering more. And another great beginner series is at videocopilot.net. They have a basic training series. These tutorials are about 5 to 10 minutes a piece, and there's 10 of those. So either one of those you choose to do are really good. It's going to get you up and running really quick, and then you'll be able to follow along with this tutorial. And I'll have links for both of those series in the description. What I've got here is a Photoshop file that I was provided by N Yates at Web Design Tuts Plus. And essentially we can see we have kind of an app with a tab here that's opened up, and we have different information here that we can click on. And the way he did it when he sent me this file, which is a great way I recommend sending an app file if you're wanting someone to animate it or just so they can kind of get a previs for it, is he's got it in two different groups here, the Nav Out, and I can turn that off from visibility. And so we can kind of see now, this is what it would look like at the startup, and then if we want it to open up, we would press here, it's going to come out, this is going to rotate, and these are going to pop in. And he told me when he sent me this that he wanted the tab to come out and then kind of the text to kind of almost lag a little bit behind it when it comes out, so almost as if it pulls it into the screen. And this is really easy to animate in After Effects, so we're definitely going to take a look at that. I will make a side note here, the background image here is from unsplash.com. I'll have a link for that in the description as well. Alright, let's also take a quick look at what we're going to be creating exactly with the finished product here. Hit play, we can see that the app opens up, we select, it closes back up, and I can drag this here just to look at it a little bit slower. Alright guys, now that we've seen this, let's get to it. We're going to import this PSD file into After Effects. First thing we're going to want to do is open up After Effects. I'm going to double click here in the project box so I can import. There's my Photoshop file, the new UI. This will also be included with the project download, so I'm going to double click that to import. I'm going to get this pop up. This always pops up when you import PSDs that have multiple layers. It's going to ask me how I want to import this as a composition with retained layer sizes, as a regular composition, or as footage. We want the composition retained layer sizes. And we're going to hit OK. As we can see, it's created a new composition that's named our Photoshop file, which is new UI. It also creates a folder that has all of the assets inside of it. So essentially each layer, we can double click this and see kind of what's going on here of like the nav out and nav in. So let's close that back up, and now I'm going to double click on this composition that it created when I brought it in, the new UI. And just for the sake of helping me keep track of stuff, I'm going to click on this and hit enter, and I'm going to rename this composition main, so I know that this is the main composition that I want to render out in the end when I finish everything. Alright, we can zoom in here, set this back on to full. I'll pull this down so we can see this a little bit better. What we've got is essentially our exact Photoshop file now inside of After Effects, where we have, inside of this main composition, we have two other compositions, a Nav Out, and I can turn on and off the visibility there. And this looks very much like the Photoshop file that we just looked at. So I've got these two compositions, the Nav Out and the Nav In, and the background image. Now when I do my animations, I'm actually only going to want to work with one of these two, either the Nav Out or the Nav In. I'm actually going to work with the Nav Out. So the Nav In composition, I'm just going to turn it off. It'll be a reference if I want to look at it later. But you'll see why we don't really need both of them, because we're just going to be animating the one. But referencing the other one helps kind of with placement with stuff whenever you're looking where things need to be. Alright, so now with our Nav Out composition here, let's double click it. Now this opens up. I'm going to drag this up. We can see all the different layers we have inside of this composition. We have navigation icon, which is right there, the three lines. We have a background, which is just that sphere there. We have our text layer, so we can toggle this on and off. We have the dividers, our selection rectangle there. That's what we're going to highlight whenever we select our option. And then we have this background for the navigation there. So we don't have too many pieces. This should be pretty simple to animate, and we'll get a good slick animation going on here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to animate is going to be this tab, having it in over here on the right and then coming out to reveal the information. I just want to focus on the blue background and kind of the navigation icon up here in the top left corner. So right now I'm going to turn off the text layer here, layer 3, and the divider layer by clicking on this little eyeball here. It's going to turn off the visibility, and also the rectangle here, the selection rectangle. So what we need to do first, before we move everything over here to the right, we're going to want to parent some of these layers to each other so we can just animate one of them and they'll all kind of animate together. So the first thing I'm going to do here is this BTN BG, which is essentially this sphere here, is kind of attached to the background, but if I move the background right now, you can clearly see these pieces are separate. Hit Control Z to undo that, which is a simple fix. Let's just select this sphere right there, the BTN BG, grab the pick whip tool right here, drag it down to the Nav BG layer and let go. Now when we select the Nav BG and move it around, these are both connected. Hit Control Z to undo that, and that's exactly what we want. We also want to parent this navigation icon, but before we actually parent it to the Nav BG, I've noticed that the center point, because this is going to rotate later on in our animation, so if I hit the R key with that selected, it's going to bring up my rotation. And if you can see, if I try to rotate it right now, it's not rotating on its center of mass. Essentially, it's rotating around this point right here, and that's not what I want. Just to avoid problems later, we're going to fix that now. So I'm going to hit Control Z. So we're going to go up here and select the pan behind tool. Let's click that. Now let's click the center point here for this layer while we have it selected, and drag this up and kind of zoom in here. Just kind of set it in the center point best you kind of visually can see there, and that's going to work fine for us right there. Go back and select the selection tool. Now that we've got the center realigned, we can select the pick whip tool here and parent the navigation icon to the Nav BG as well. So now when we move the Nav BG, everything's moving together, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to zoom in on our timeline over here just a little bit and grab this, zoom in. I'm going to want this to animate out at about the 1 second point, so I want to have a point where it's not animating and then animates out over a couple of about 10 frames or so. So what I'm going to do is pull this out to about 1 second. I'm going to close that up. With this Nav BG selected, I'm going to hit P, and this brings up my position. Right now, what I want to do at the 1 second point, I'm actually going to create a keyframe by selecting that stopwatch there, and so that'll create a keyframe for us right here. And then I'm going to hit the page down key about actually 6 times, which will move me down 6 frames. Page up and page down move you 1 frame at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. And now what I want to do is click this icon, the little diamond here. It's going to create another keyframe for us. So I'm actually going to move this back to our original first keyframe here. With that selected, I'm going to click and hold Shift and kind of drag this over to the right to a point where I think it kind of looks like it's close to the starting position, which right about there looks about right. So I'll let go of both of those. And so now if I pull out here on the zoom just a little bit, I'm going to close this preview to about 2 seconds by hitting the N key so that so we'll only preview our work area right here. So I'm going to hit the 0 key on the numeric keypad to preview this. There we can see it pops out. And it's resetting there when it pops back up in the end. But so there we go. Now we've got our tab popping out. But we can do a lot of stuff to this to make it look a lot better. And so we're going to get into that now. The first thing we can do to make this a little bit smoother is select this second keyframe. And we're going to hit F9, which is going to turn that keyframe into an easy ease keyframe, where essentially the animation is going to kind of gradually slow down as it gets near the end. So let's preview that now. So we can already tell this looks a little bit sleeker. It's not quite app ready yet, but we'll keep working with it. So what we'll do now is we'll select this second keyframe and we'll come over here to the graph editor. We'll click that, and we can kind of see exactly the speed at which our background is moving and how it kind of speeds quickly at first and gradually slows down near the end. If your graph editor doesn't look like this, you can right click, and you're going to want to have it on auto select graph editor type. It may be under Edit Value Graph, which is going to give you these two lines, and it's much harder to animate things in this graph view. So right click and select Auto Select Graph or Edit Speed Graph. All right, we really want this to pop out with a lot of speed and then kind of very gradually slow down. So I'm going to click this tool here, which is going to fit the graph to the view, just kind of stretches it out a little bit there. So this is our second keyframe where it's going to end up. I've got this kind of Bezier handle sticking out here. If I grab it and pull it over to the left, we can see the influence percentage there is going up all the way up to 100%. So now we can see that this is going to pop out really quick at the beginning and then really gradually slow down. So we're really going to be able to tell a lot of visual difference here when we preview this. So I'm going to deselect the graph editor here. I'm going to hit the subtract key at the top to kind of zoom out, hit 0 to preview again. And now it's looking a lot slicker. Actually, with motion blur on, it's really going to look slicker. So what we can do, and we're going to want to do this for all of our layers, so you can select the Nav BG, and this is the Enable Motion Blur selection, so we can click that, and you're going to see these 3 circles. That essentially means motion blur. So we can also click on our top layer, hold Shift, and click on, in this case, layer 5 here. I'm going to turn that on for all those layers. And so with that on for all these layers, we have the main controller here, which is going to enable motion blur for our composition. We can turn this on and off when we want to preview it, whenever we want to preview it. Turn it on, it will take a little bit longer to render, but you know, it's great for previewing. So I'm going to hit 0 again to preview, and that looks much slicker now. It's got a lot more pop to it. I'm going to turn motion blur back off and back onto the graph editor here. Like I said, when I need to select those keyframes, so I'm going to go to position here, select the keyframe, then go to the graph editor. I'm going to click fit to view. And when I pull this Bezier handle over, the influence is on 100, and you can adjust this, to whatever you want it to be. And sometimes when you're doing it in this view, it's hard to get exact numbers. So in this case, it's on like 94.33. If you want to get exact numbers on your animations, it's easy to do. Just right click on this and go to keyframe velocity. And you're going to get to your incoming velocity and outgoing velocity. Since this is the end that I'm kind of doing my slowdown on, it's going to be the incoming. So it begins and essentially moves to wherever it's incoming to. And as we can see, this correlates with the 94.33 that we saw. So I can select this, just type in 100, and that's going to get us back to 100% influence on that. So if you need things to be exact, if you have more than one object that you're wanting to have the exact same kind of motion to it, that's an easy way to just type in different numbers and values, make sure they're the exact same. Okay, now that we have our tab animated, we need to also animate this navigation icon up here at the top. We'll notice that even though the tab is back in to the far right, the rotation of our navigation icon is actually wrong right now. We want it to be at this orientation when it ends up. So right here is where we want it to end up. So I'm going to select the navigation icon and hit R. And right above my other position keyframe for my background, if you can't see that, just hit the P key and that'll show you that. Or you can also hit the U key to reveal the keyframes when you have that layer selected. So I'm going to come back up here to navigation icon, and I've got my current time indicator lined up above the last keyframe of the Nav BG. So I'm going to create a keyframe for rotation on our navigation icon. Now if we pull this back to where our background first starts animating, I'm going to create another keyframe, and actually I can just change the value here. So I'm going to type in 90. And now if we scroll through, we'll see this rotates as that pops out. But first thing we'll notice is it doesn't look like it's rotating quite as smooth as like our background is, and that's because right now we just have our standard keyframes. We can select this keyframe here, the second one, hit F9 to create an easy ease keyframe, and we can go to the graph editor for it too. And since it's just on rotation, there's only kind of one axis here, so the line looks a little bit different than our one before did. But we can grab our Bezier handle here, pull it out all the way over to the far left. So I'm guessing the influence then is going to be 100. Let's right click, just double check and select keyframe velocity. It's off the screen there. We can see our incoming velocity is 100%, hit OK. So this tells me that it's going to rotate very quick at the beginning and then kind of gradually slow down at the end. So I'm going to zoom out here, turn on motion blur, hit 0, preview this. That's actually going a little fast for me there. It almost looks like it just completely pops too quick. So I might actually adjust the length of this. I'm going to drag this keyframe down maybe 2 or 3 extra frames there, just so it kind of lags just a little bit there. I'm going to hit 0 preview again. And there we go. That helps us so we can see the rotation a little bit clearer, so it doesn't look like it's immediately rotating. But you can adjust this to your liking. You know, if you wanted, you could also just grab these keyframes, move them completely a lot further down the timeline. We'll preview this so it pops out and then rotates. It's just whatever you prefer. I'm going to hit Control-Z to actually move those keyframes back to the way they were before. All right, so now that we have that problem solved, we can start animating some of our text that's going to kind of pull in after this pops out. So let's go to the point to where, you know, probably, I'm going to hit page down. Let's go down 4 frames from the beginning of our navigation background, so just 2 frames before it finishes. And I'm going to turn back on the visibility for our divider. We'll do that one first. So it's very, very difficult to see here, I'm sure, in this tutorial because of the compression of this video, but there's these little lines here that kind of pop in between the text. I'm going to turn the text on, so we've got our text here, and this is where the line is. Probably very difficult to see, and I apologize. But the cross dividers are there. Like I said, it just may be difficult to see. So what we're going to do, I'm going to turn the text layer back off from visibility. So we're at this position in our timeline. Like I said, I'm going to move 4 frames down from the beginning of the navigation background animation. And I'm going to create a keyframe for the divider. I'm going to hit P for position, create a keyframe there. This is just so I know kind of where I want to start from. So I'm going to actually move down 6 frames from this. So I'm going to hit page down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to create another keyframe. And I'm going to press F9 on that keyframe. And I can either right click on the keyframe for the keyframe velocity, or I'm just going to go back to the graph editor since I know you guys can see this. Actually, I need to move it first. So I'm going to go back to our first starting position. So we know that this needs to start off of the screen. So I'm going to select it with the mouse and hold shift and just pull it over to the right to where it's off the screen there. It's right about there. So now if we scroll through here, we can see it pops on. And if I select the second keyframe, go to keyframe, graph editor here, and I'll pull the Bezier handle so the influence is all the way to 100. So it's essentially doing the exact same animation the background is, just a little bit delayed. So that's going to give it the impression that it's being pulled onto the screen. I'm going to pop the preview animation back up here just so you can see this a little bit better, I think. So we've got our background, it's going to pop out, and now we can see our divider lines are going to pop in afterward. So that's the part that we're animating right now. So it's essentially doing the exact same keyframe animation, just a little bit delayed. All right, so now that we kind of have the divider animated with the delay, let's actually turn on our text layer, and let's animate it. We'll have it come in just a little bit delayed after the dividers come in. So here's our divider layer. I'm going to change the color of this just so we can see it a little bit easier. You can come over to these boxes and just click, and you get all these different color options. I'll turn this to an orange. So that's our divider. And this layer here, change it to a green. So just so we can see these a little bit easier. And if you're ever working in After Effects, it's just a cool tip. So I'm going to click on our text layer here and hit the P key for position. So we can see this is the keyframe where our divider starts. So I'm going to move down 4 keyframes from my divider keyframe animation beginning, because that was 4 keyframes down from the Nav BG, just to kind of keep it consistent. So I'll hit page down, 1, 2, 3, 4. Click on my text layer, make a keyframe. Let's move down 6 more keyframes because that's the total length that I want it to move in on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Create another position keyframe. Drag this back to our beginning keyframe for the position of the text. I'm going to grab the text, hold shift, pull it over to the right here, just so it's off the screen, and let go of both of those. We've got our motion blur on here. I'm going to turn that off just for a second. So now if we scroll through, we can see the tab pops in, there comes the divider, and now we can keep pulling over, and then there comes in our text. So it's just a little bit delayed. We're also going to make this second keyframe an easy ease by pressing F9 and go to the graph editor and pull its influence on the velocity to 100%. So it also moves in with the same smoothness as the others. So now that we have all these animating in, I'm going to turn motion blur back on. Let's do a RAM preview of this real quick. Pressing 0 on the numeric keypad. And there we go. It's looking a lot slicker. We got the the pop in of the tab, and then we have the divider comes in just a little bit delayed, and the text. So it kind of pulls it in. So now that we have everything is popped out, we need to turn on our selection box. So I'm going to scroll through here. So we have this pop out in about 2 seconds. So we'll have it select our option at about the 2-second mark. So I'm going to grab a marker indicator right here and just drag this over just so I can kind of give me a better visual aid. So here's our rectangle, which is our selection box. And if you ever want to rename something, I'm actually going to rename this to selection box. You just click it, hit enter. It's just going to help me remember easier. We can change the color of this to a blue. And so what we want is our selection box to just appear on screen at around 2 seconds. So I'm going to turn the visibility back on. I can grab the front end of it here and just click with my mouse and just pull and drag it up to my current time indicator, which is right there at the 2-second mark. You can also hold shift and it'll kind of pop onto that, let go. So now if we scroll through, we'll see that everything kind of comes in and then it gets selected. Now we're going to create kind of an animation of the tap where the circles kind of appear and go away, but we'll create that after we've created our initial animations with everything else. So now we have that selected. Now all we have to do is essentially move everything back over to the right, kind of in the same fashion that it first appeared. And I'm going to move down from when this selection box appears about 10 keyframes, so I could push page down 10 times if I wanted to, but actually here's a little shortcut. If you hold shift and then press page down, that's going to automatically move you down 10 frames there, so that makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to add another marker indicator just so I kind of know this is where I want everything to begin moving back over to the right hand side. So on that note, I'm going to go down to the navigation background, and I'm going to animate this one first just because it's going to be easier for us to see. And I'm going to create a position keyframe. Make sure you click that. It's going to give us an easy ease. And that usually happens after you've created an easy ease keyframe. Any keyframes you create after that will start out as an easy ease keyframe. If you don't want it to be easy ease, which we in this case don't, you can hold the control on your keyboard and just click, and that's going to change it back to a standard keyframe. So now what we want to do is move down 6 frames again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Press my page down for that. And I'm going to grab my background. Actually, we don't even need to grab the background. We can come over here to our keyframe initially, where the tab was all the way over to the right. And this is good just to give us the exact position. So I can select this keyframe. I'm going to hit Control C on the keyboard to copy it. Move back down here. Move down 6 keyframes. And I'm going to hit Control V to paste that back in. So now we've pasted back in that position, so we can scroll through here and see kind of what this is doing. And we're going to want to select this second keyframe here and press F9 to make it an easy ease. Go to our graph editor, pull this back to 100%, and now this should go back in with the slick, smooth movement that it originally came out with. So it's basically taking our initial animation and basically reversing it, which is exactly what we want. But in this case, we want everything to move back over to the right at the same time. So I'm going to move back out here, line it back up with where this first starts to move back in. So what we can do for the selection box, we'll click on the selection box, and since we want it to move back in with the background tab, since it originally didn't animate on and just kind of appeared out of nowhere, we can kind of do a shortcut with this. We can select our selection box, and we will grab the pick whip tool and we'll parent it to the nav BG. And when we do that, you'll notice now when the background animates back in, it pulls the selection box with it. This is just something that's going to help us out, and whenever you can take advantage of parenting layers to other layers, definitely do that. This won't work for everything we have though, because these other layers have their own keyframe animation. So if I started parenting stuff back to our nav BG, it's going to pull it in and appear in places where it shouldn't. So just kind of take my word for it, I guess, on that one, that the selection box, we can take that shortcut with it and be fine. and move right back to where our ending animation kind of goes back in. So we'll line that up. We'll click on the divider. We'll create a keyframe. Control click to make it back to a regular keyframe, and we can go back to our first keyframe in that position movement for the divider. Hit Control C. Get our current time indicator right above the final keyframe of the nav BG. With our divider selected, hit Control V to paste that keyframe. Hit F9. Turns it into an easy ease. And we can zoom in here. Pull that second keyframe Bezier handle all the way to 100% influence. So now when we pull out here, this should make the divider move in. Yeah, we can see the orange border there. So if you can't see the actual lines, just look at this orange border. You can see that move back with the background tab in the same movement. So it's looking good so far. We're going to want to do the same exact thing for the text here. So we'll create a position keyframe for that. Control click to turn it to a regular keyframe. Let's select the first keyframe in the text layer movement, hit Control C, paste it above our final point, hit F9 to turn it into an easy ease, click on our graph editor, pull that out so that the influence is 100% again. And I know this is kind of repetitive, but that's just kind of the way you have to do it when you have an animation that is exact like this one is, and you know, it's a lot of steps, but it's going to look a lot sleeker when it gets done. And actually I think we are done with that now. So now let's take a RAM preview of that, because these other layers like the nav icon and this BT background, they're parented to the background layer, so they've already moved in. So we got motion blur on, hit 0 on the numeric keypad. Let's do another preview. So there we go, we have our app open up, rotate, select, moves back in. And one thing you'll notice immediately though is that the selection box stays highlighted. This is an easy fix. So we have it parented to our background. I'm going to turn off motion blur for a second just so we can see this. So the position of it is going to move with the background layer when it moves because it's parented to it, which is fine. But we're also going to want to animate the opacity of it. We're going to want it to kind of dissolve away. So I'll twirl down our options here. Under transform for the selection box, you have the opacity tab. What we can do is we're going to create a keyframe. I'm going to actually click the selection box and I'm just going to hit T. That's the shortcut for opacity. So now we just have that option visible here so we can see everything else a little easier. So right when it starts to animate back in, which is right here on this marker, I'm going to create a keyframe for opacity. We'll move down here to where the animation finishes. And I'm going to set opacity to 0 so we can see it's dissolved away up here. But we want this to be as smooth as everything else. So I'll push F9, create an easy ease keyframe, and we'll do this one with the keyframe velocity. I'll right click, keyframe velocity, and our incoming velocity, which is where it's going to end up. I'll put it 100%. Just double check it with the graph editor there. That looks good to me. Scroll through. And there we go, we can see it dissolve away there. So this looks like the way it was before initially. So now let's RAM preview this. It should look like a loop now. There we go, select. There we go, we got our loop. Our motion blur is off right now, so that's why it looked a little choppy. So now that we have the animation finished, let's click back over here to our main composition. So now we have the background and everything in here. We have our nav in turned off. We don't really need that. We can actually select that and just delete it, just to simplify things here. So I'm going to close off our work area here just so we only have to see the first kind of 4 seconds of this because it's about 4 or 5 seconds long. So I'll select right around here, hit N on the keyboard. It's going to close in the work area so we only render within this area. And this composition, it came in, it's about 45 seconds long. If you want another shortcut, you can just right click on the work area and click trim comp to work area, and that'll trim it down to just within this 4-second period. So, because that's all we really need. So now I'm gonna hit 0 to preview this. Let's turn on motion blur. And there we go, we can see this matches the preview animation we looked at the very beginning. So now we kind of have our slick animation. If we want to create a loop out of this, very easy to do because it looks the exact same where it ends up. And actually we do have one error I just noticed. I don't know if you guys caught it or not, but we can fix it really simply. Let's go back in our nav out here. I just noticed that when we pulled back in, our navigation icon up here didn't rotate back to the way it was before. So we'll fix that the same way we did these others. But with the divider here, the animation starts. I'm going to turn off motion blur so we can see it. We will select, we'll create a keyframe here because we want it to start where it currently is. I'm going to control click on that. And let's move down to the end. We'll set this rotation. We'll grab the starting rotation, hit Control C and Control V to paste. Hit F9. Right click, select keyframe velocity, set it at 100%, not 1,000, just 100. And so now when this pulls back in, it will rotate back to its starting position. Now we're cooking with fire here. Alright, now we need to create that little tap animation that we had, the little white circle sphere that kind of adds the extra touch to this so we can kind of see where it's being touched on the app. In order for us to do that, it's really simple to do. We're going to go over here and select this icon, create a new composition. We're going to make it a custom width and height. We're going to uncheck the lock aspect ratio. We're just going to make this 200 by 200. Set the duration to about 2 seconds because we really don't need that much. We're going to call this tap. Hit OK. All right, in here we're going to create a new solid. Make it white, hit OK. And what we can do now is we need to create, obviously we need a sphere shape. This is easy to do. We'll go over to the mask tool. We're going to select an ellipse and just double click on it. While you have that layer selected, it's automatically going to create a circle mask that's perfectly round. We're going to animate some of the keyframe properties of the mask here. So if I turn on the mask visibility here, so I have this yellow line around our circle. I'm going to scroll down the mask options here. We have this thing called mask expansion. So if I drag this here, you can kind of see what this is doing. It's making the mask bigger and smaller. So what we want to do is actually start this out at -100. So it's not there at all. We can toggle the transparency. We can see there's nothing there. And we have a keyframe indicator here, so we can do the same keyframe options we did before. So we'll create a keyframe here. Let's move down 4 keyframes, so page down 4 times. We'll set this at 100. Actually, set it at 0. And we'll hit F9 to kind of create an easy ease keyframe on that. And then what we're going to do is actually we're going to select this mask. We're going to hit Control D to duplicate it. So we have another mask here. And we're going to set this to subtract. And we need to pull the mask expansion on the subtraction one down to -100. And you can already see the mask expansion already has a keyframe on it because we duplicated it. We're going to want to uncheck that to kind of reset it. So what we have going on here is our first mask animates on. And now we can make a keyframe on our second mask here, which is a subtraction. And we can move down 4 more keyframes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll set this to 0. So you can see what this kind of did here. So what we can do now is create an easy ease keyframe on the second keyframe. Press F9. Pull the influence of it all the way over to the left. Makes it 100. Now let's run and preview this to see how this looks. I'm going to turn off the mask visibility so you don't have to see that. When we preview, hit 0. And there we go. We can see it pops in and pops off. We do have kind of a little bit of an edge here, which is easy to fix. So just highlight your current time indicator over the last keyframe of the subtraction, and we can just pull this up to about 2 pixels. That gets rid of that, so now we don't have anything left. So we have that kind of tap on and go away. And if you want to enable motion blur, you can definitely do that. So we can turn on motion blur for the layer and then turn it on for the composition. It's going to add just a little bit of a different dynamic to it. You can kind of see how it fades away. Preview that. And in this case, I actually like it better without the motion blur. It kind of looks a little trippy. So this looks a little cleaner. So now let's click back on our main composition. And we can see over here we have our tap composition in our project box. So on our timeline, I'm going to move to right whenever the animation first begins, which is right there. So what we can do, I'm going to pull back about 1 keyframe before, and I'll pull in the tap animation. I'll pull it down so the beginning of it appears right there. And actually, I'm going to leave it about as big as it gets right there. We're going to want to scale this down. So what we can do is hit S for scale. I'm going to pull this down to about that big. I'm going to move this up to about right there so it's on top of our navigation icon. And we can also hit T for the opacity. I'm going to set this at 50% just so we can kind of see through it there. I'll position this just over top of that. So I want to begin about right there. So I'm going to zoom back out here. I'm going to hit 0 on the keypad and ramp preview this. We can see that looks a little bit delayed, so I'm actually going to start that animation a little bit before. So pull this down. So it's about right there on the timeline. So yeah, let's ramp preview this. This looks a little bit neater. And there we go, that matches up a lot better. So if we want to do 2 of those, we can just click on this tap icon. I'm going to change the color so we can just see it better. Click on it. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it. So now we have 2 layers. Let's move down to the point where we select the without option. So I'll move up just a little bit from it. Pull this down. Move this layer right above the without option. You can sync the timing up to however you prefer, whatever you like. Zoom back out, and now we have those 2 in place. I'm going to hit RAM preview again. And so there we go, we have our selection, and it selects the second option, and then the navigation goes back in. Alright guys, hopefully you picked up some tips on the animation with the keyframes here, and kind of how it's done. It is quite a process, but once you kind of get it down, you'll get a lot more familiar with it and get a better feel for it. I also, one other thing, we've got our app kind of application here. I've got an image of an iPhone. I'm going to drag this down onto the Create Composition button. That'll create a new composition the exact same size as this phone file. So this is an image of an iPhone here. And if we want our UI to be on top of it, we can just have this phone image. I'm going to rename this. Hit enter. I'll just call this app. We can grab our main composition, drag it into the app composition. So now we kind of have 2 compositions together here. And I can grab this and I can just scale up. Hit S to scale this up so it kind of covers the screen of the iPhone. And actually might hit T to adjust the opacity for it just for the time being to about 75%. And we can create a mask for this. We just kind of want to line this up over the green background there. And first thing you'll notice, I think this is a newer generation iPhone, so the screen emissions have kind of changed, more widescreen. The app we kind of did our design for was for more of the little bit older iPhone model. We can fix that kind of easily though if we want a quick fix. I'll just select the main and I'll grab the mask tool up here. And I'll just kind of click up on the corner there. Pull down. So we have a mask over our animation, our UI animation. I'll turn the opacity back to 100%, turn off the mask visibility. I may need to tweak this just a little bit. And there we go, you get the idea. So now we can ramp preview this. You can kind of see your animation on a phone if you want to go that route. I'll include this file with the project file when you download it. You can play with that and just kind of experiment. But now we need to export this. So this composition we're in right now is called app, so that's the one we're going to want to export. And everyone's export settings are going to be different. You're going to want to click on the render queue here, the render queue tab, and we'll click on our app composition. I'm going to drag this down. For the output, I'm going to select on this yellow option here, and we can set this on QuickTime, format options. H.264 is our video codec, and the quality at 95 should be fine. Everything else here looks fine. We don't have any audio or anything like that. So I'm just going to hit OK. You can change the name of it right here if you want to rename it. And one thing I want to double check before I do my render is I'll click back on our app composition. And if I scroll through here just to make sure everything's in, we can see that it actually cuts off a little too soon. So if I want to adjust the composition length, I just right click composition settings in a gray area. And I'll set this actually at 5 seconds. Hit OK. zoom out here, and there's my phone image. I'll need to pull this down so it fills up the entire 5 seconds or so. Actually, I'll just move it down about right there. You can actually just pull the work area down also, just about right there. It looks like where it ends. Let's go back to my render queue, and under best settings, we can click that, and the time span I've got it selected to just render the work area only. I think that's the default. So it's only gonna render what's in that work area. Hit OK, and click render. It's gonna render out here. We can see it on screen. Everything should look the same. And that's finished. Click on it to preview it. There it is. And there we go. Looks exactly the way we want it to. If you want to create an animated GIF, that's really easy to do too. Let's go back in Photoshop here and just go to File and select Open, and then import your video animation you just exported into Photoshop. I'm working in Photoshop CC, so this may not work in some of the older versions of Photoshop, but we can actually import video sequences into Photoshop now. And if we go to File and Save for Web, we get the GIF option setting here, and this is a little bit laggy. It's going to take it a second to kind of process. All right, so let's open that up, and we can see this is quite large, but you can adjust your different GIF settings to what you want them to be. Like in this case, the percentage, I probably set it around 20%. And that'll load up and kind of resize everything here. So that resizes that, and you can preview it here by clicking the play button, and we can see our GIF animation right there. So just adjust these settings and how many colors you want. And you can check your file size right down here in the bottom left corner. And whenever you're done kind of with all of your settings, just click save and save out your GIF file and upload a Dribbble or wherever you want to upload it to. Alright guys, that's all I got for you. Hopefully you picked up a couple things and didn't bore you to death. And if you have any questions or if you run into a problem, definitely post in the comments, and I will be checking that regularly and try to reply, and maybe even create a couple follow-up tutorials to answer some of your questions you might have. And definitely experiment with After Effects. And this is Charles Yeager for Tuts Plus.